This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Maybe you're listening on my website at henrywalker.org under audio messages, or maybe you're listening at podpoint.com/Henry Walker, podpoint.com/Henry Walker, or maybe you're listening on my YouTube channel, New Life Revival International Henry Walker. New Life Revival International Henry Walker. I want to start a new message today talking about how judgment is coming to the world, but justice is coming to us. But let's go to the Father in prayer first. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. Help people, Father, to open up their spirits, Father, and not only receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. Let's go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 40. Again, we're talking about how judgment is coming to the world, but justice is coming to us and for us. There's so many things happening in the world. I had a dream the other night where it was like a tidal wave was coming and people were trying to tie a rope to themselves to some kind of object like a tree that would not be moved. And you could see the tidal wave in the distance and it was coming and people were scared. There's a judgment coming on this world because of what they're doing, what they're allowing to be done. And the Father's the one that's bringing the judgment. But He's also going to show up and show out for us. Prepare a table before us, right in the midst of our enemies, and bless us and use us in these last days. This is an end-time message. I believe that we're in that pre-rapture season. But so many people are just going on. And what they're trying to teach young children, crazy ideas from crazy people. How long will the Father put up with it? We'll see. I'm not saying He's going to kill somebody, but He's going to bring His judgment. People are trying to hold on, as I mentioned in that dream, try to hold on to something that's solid. They try to hold on to some politician, can't. They try to hold on to the mainstream media for the truth. Mainstream media is not giving people the truth. It's giving people what they want them to hear. And you got mainstream ministers who are talking about prosperity, name it, claim it, blab it, grab it, without the soul prospering. It's so dangerous. So what do people look for help to hold on to? Well, the only person is Yahshua, and the only thing is His word. His word, His name, and His blood are weapons that we have at our disposal. But Isaiah 40, see, the people in the world don't know who they're fooling around with. They picture Him carrying a little lamb over his shoulders, but they forget about He's the one that drove out the money changers. He's the one that closed the Red Sea on the Egyptians. He's the one that knocked down Jericho flat. And He's the one that is showing up for us in these last days and showing out for us and using us to bring more and more people to Him through that rapture door. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 10. Behold, Yahweh Elohim will come with strong hand, and His arm shall rule for Him. Behold, His reward is with Him, and His work before Him. He shall feed His flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with His arm, and carry them in His bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young, as I mentioned before. But He who had measured the waters in a hollow of His hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance. He took a drop of water and weighed all the water that He wanted on the earth to a drop of water. He took a piece of dust and weighed all the dirt that He wanted on the earth to a piece of dust. That's how powerful He is. We don't know how powerful He is. That's just some indication of how powerful He is. Verse 13, who had directed the Spirit of Yahweh, or being His counselor had taught Him? With whom took He counsel? Nobody. And who instructed him? Nobody. And taught him the path of judgment? Nobody. And taught him knowledge? Nobody. And showed to him the way of understanding? Nobody. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. All the islands are a little thing in his hand. Verse 17. All the nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing, and vanity. See, everything was created by him and for him, and by him all things consist. The Father controls everything and everybody. Isaiah chapter 41. In verse 9. To whom have I taken from the ends of the earth, that's us, and called us from the chief men thereof, and said unto us, You are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you away. Fear thou not, for I am with you. That's all we need to know, is that he is with us. He is always there. Fear thou not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your Elohim. I will strengthen you. Receive that right now. I will help you. Yeah, I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. Receive that right now. In the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. Behold, all they that were incensed against you shall be ashamed and confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with you shall perish. You shall seek them, and shall not find them, even them that contended with you. They that war against you shall be as nothing, as the thing of naught. For I, Yahweh, your Elohim, our Elohim, will hold your right hand, saying unto you, Fear not, I will help you. Jehoshaphat had nobody who he could count on but Yahweh. He said, there's a multitude coming against us, but our eyes are upon you. Remember, we talked about Asa. He said, there's a multitude coming against us, but you can help with few or many. And the Father came through, for Asa destroyed them all. All he had to do is get the spoils. All Jehoshaphat had to do is pick up the spoils. The world is trying to promote fear. The world system is trying to promote fear, control, manipulation, trying to say, you got to depend upon them. But no, we just depend upon Yahweh and his strength, and he will prosper us. He'll take care of us. He just wants to use us in these last days, in this final time before the rapture, to bring more and more people to him. But again, we're talking about judgment and justice. Go to the left of the book of Judges, Judges chapter 1. So many people in the world are thinking they're getting away with something with the Father. No, 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 no. He sees all. He's omnipresent, omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful. The book of Judges chapter 1. Let's go to the left to Judges, right after Joshua. So the Israelites, led by Judah went out first and delivered them out of the hand of the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and he slew them in a place called Bezek. They slew 10,000 of them. From verse 5, they found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek, and he fought against him, and he slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adoni-Bezek fled, and he pursued after him, and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. Therefore Adoni-Bezek said, 60 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table, as I have done. So Elohim had requited me. And he brought him to Jerusalem, and therefore he died. 60 of his enemy kings, he cut off their great toes and their thumbs. So guess what? When he was captured, they did the same thing. So here's judgment on Adoni-Bezek and justice for the people that he hurt, killed. See, judgment and justice. So again, some people think they're getting away with something with the Father, but no, 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 no. Go to the right to 2 Kings chapter 8. Some of you might remember the story how Yahweh used Elisha to restore a Shunammite lady's son back to life. She and her husband had taken care of him every time he and the servant passed by. The husband was old and he couldn't have a son. And the father used Elisha to prophesy that they would have a son. But then the son died. And the father used Elisha to raise that son from the dead. 2 Kings chapter 8 verse 1. Then spoke Elisha unto the woman, the Shunammite lady, whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go thou and thy household, and sojourn wherever you can sojourn, for Yahweh had called for a famine, judgment, and it shall come upon the land 7 years. Here's the judgment. And the woman arose and did after the saying of Elisha, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of Philistines 7 years. And it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her land. And the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, saying, Tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha had done. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he had restored a dead body to life, that behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, O king, this is the woman, and this is the son who Elisha restored to life. Look at the timing of the father. Look at the timing that the father had to listen to this podcast, because he's going to restore the years that the palmerworm, the cankerworm, the locust, the caterpillar, the worm have eaten. He's a Yahweh of restoration. Receive that restoration right now. Physically, spiritually, mentally, financially, and in any area he wants to restore you right now in the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. So when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field, since the day that she left the land, even unto now. So our Father is the Yahweh of restoration. So look at the judgment that was on the land, but look how the Father brought justice to her, restoration to her, and again he wants to do the same thing to you. Maybe somebody stole something from you, cheated you out of something. Well, the Father's bringing judgment on that person or persons or company, and he's bringing that justice to you. I haven't seen anybody in the Word that came against the Father, came against His Word, and hurt people that got away with it in this earth. Those people that stole from you, cheated you, they're not going to get away with it, because they're falling under judgment, and the Father's going to restore and bring justice to you. If you go to chapter 5, 2 Kings chapter 5, here's where Naaman, who was a leper, had come to Elisha to get healed. Elisha told him to go down into the Jordan River 7 times. On the 7th time, he came up, and his flesh was like a little child. And he wanted to give an offering to Elisha. Elisha said no, he refused, which is very, very important. In verse 17, and Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other pagan gods, but unto Yahweh. But here's something that's very, very important too. In this thing, Yahweh pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, a pagan god, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bowed down myself in the house of Rimmon, Yahweh pardon thy servant in this thing. So here, Yahweh had healed him, and now he's going to bow down to a pagan god because his boss wants him to. So you can see why Elisha didn't want to touch that offering. But Gehazi, his servant, went after Naaman and said, Elisha changed his mind. He wanted a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing for the sons of the prophets. And what Gehazi didn't realize that the leprosy was on the money and on the clothes. It became a leper. There's a judgment for touching something that he shouldn't have touched. You can see why Elisha didn't want to touch that. Because it seemed like Naaman was not worshiping Yahweh, the one true Yahweh, the one true King of the universe. Again, the one who healed them. But back in chapter 8, 2 Kings chapter 8, in verse 7, Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick, and was told him, saying, Elisha is come hither. And the king said unto Hazael, Take a present in thy hand, and go and meet Elisha, and inquire of Yahweh by him, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels burdened, and came and stood before him, and said, Thy son Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, had sent me to you, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? So here, Elisha did not want to touch that offering from Naaman, but here we have no record that he turned down his 40 camels full of precious things from Damascus. So he had justice. He turned down what Yahweh wanted him to turn down, but look what he gave him in return. Maybe somebody presented something to you that seemed like a great opportunity, and then the Father told you to say no. You backed off, and it collapsed. But the Father will give you an opportunity because you turned down that opportunity, which was not of Him. Those of you that are in the ministry, sometimes you got to turn down some offerings from the people who the Father doesn't want you to receive an offering from. He's got something better for you. So again, we see justice and judgment. Judgment on Gehazi, but justice for Elisha. Just go to the left of the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Again, talking about judgment and justice. The Father's justice. He brings justice like nobody else ever could, can, or will ever bring justice. Exodus chapter 12. This is the Passover, and this is the last plague against the Egyptians, judgment on the Egyptians not letting the Father's people go. And maybe there's an element of control in your life. Maybe people are trying to control your life and put you in fear, uncertainty, making you apprehensive. But no, I curse that control. I rebuke that control right now in the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. You are free. You are free in the name of Yahshua by His blood. Every time I pray, I use the blood of Yahshua too, not just His name, because His blood is an offensive weapon. A symbol of His blood, the lamb's blood on Passover, freed the Israelites. In verse 29, and it came to pass that at midnight Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he said, Moses, go. And they left. Verse 33, the Egyptians were urging upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we are all dead men. In verse 34, and the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. They are ready to go. Are you ready to leave a situation? Are you ready to leave a company? Are you ready to leave a job and go where the Father wants you to go? He wants to springboard you into your purpose and destiny in these last days. A higher level, as we talked about in the last podcast. It's like stepping on the diving board. Step on that diving board. Not where you can jump it on the beginning of it. And when He tells you to go out deeper, He's going to springboard you into a purpose that only you can fulfill with the Father's help. In verse 35, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and clothing. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Look at the judgment that came on Pharaoh and the Egyptians that were trying to keep him in slavery, and look at the justice that the Father wrought on their behalf and gave them jewels, gold, silver, and clothing. They spoiled the Egyptians. Matter of fact, in Exodus 14, talking about the Red Sea closing on the enemy, on the Egyptians and Pharaoh, He wiped out the debts of a whole nation at the Red Sea. And He can wipe out your debts too, right now. If you're tithing and give offerings to Him, He can wipe out any debt you have right now in the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. As a matter of fact, I mentioned on the last podcast that we feed the poor in Nassau, the Bahamas. And if any of you want to help in that regard, you can donate by going to henrywalker.org and hitting the donate button, or podpoint.com/Henry Walker and hit the donate button. We're a 501c3 organization. Everything is tax deductible. If the Father puts that on your heart, we will gladly receive it. So again, we're talking about judgment on the world, but justice coming to us. See, the world has taken advantage of so many people. And maybe some of us have been taken advantage of, but there's going to be a wealth coming from the sinners to go to His just. Let's go with me to the right to the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 14. Before we go into Numbers chapter 14, I just want to remind you that every podcast, I pray for the babies in the womb. I want to do that again. This is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception. Here's some facts I want to mention to you that are so very, very important. The baby in the womb, their heart begins to beat around 18 days. At around 4 months, the baby's heart is pumping about 25 quarts of blood per day. This is not a tissue, this is a life. There's a purpose in the flesh. And most scientists believe that life begins at conception. The College of Pediatrics believe that life begins at conception. But let's pray for the babies in the womb right now. Father, touch the babies in the womb, Father. Bring them to a full, healthy birth, Father, in the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. And if any of you out there had an abortion, repent, ask the Father to forgive you, and go on and follow him into your purpose and destiny. In Numbers chapter 14, here's where Moses sent out the 12 spies. In verse 6, Numbers chapter 14, verse 6, and Joshua the son of Nun, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And he spoke unto the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it us a land which floweth with milk and honey. But don't rebel against him. Don't fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us, in verse 9. Their defense is departed from them, and Yahweh is with us, fear them not. But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. And the presence of Yahweh appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. Yahweh was so upset that he said in verse 30, doubtless you shall not come into the land concerning which I swore to make you dwell in, save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. But your little ones, which you said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. Wow. There's that judgment. Go with me to Joshua chapter 14 as we close. Joshua chapter 14. Just go to the right to Joshua 14. They're dividing up the land by inheritance, but nobody wanted to go near Mount Hebron. But Joshua chapter 14, verse 7, Caleb is speaking. 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of Yahweh, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed Yahweh my Elohim. And Moses swore in that day, saying, surely the land whereupon thy feet hath trodden shall be your inheritance, and your children's forever, because thou hast wholly followed Yahweh my Elohim. And now behold, Yahweh has kept me alive these 45 years, even since Yahweh spoke this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. Yet as yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, even so my strength now for war, but to go out and to come in. Now give me that mountain whereof Yahweh spoke in that day. For thou heard in that day how the Anakims were there, and the cities were great and fenced. If so be that Yahweh will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out. As Yahweh said, and Joshua blessed them and gave Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, Hebron for inheritance. In the next chapter, 15, verse 16, and Caleb said, he that smiteth Kirjath Sheba, and taketh it, to him will I give Aishah, my daughter, to wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave Asa, his daughter, to wife. And it came to pass, as she came unto him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field. And she lighted off her donkey, and Caleb said unto her, what would you want me to do? And she answered and said, give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a south land, give me also springs of water. And he gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. So look how the Father brought judgment on all of Israel except the children and Joshua and Caleb, and he brought justice to Caleb. He waited 45 years for his inheritance. Everybody was afraid to go to Mount Hebron, but not him, because he put his feet there 45 years ago, and Moses said, that'll be your land. And that was in his heart. He left his heart on Mount Hebron. And he went back to get it. And he got Mount Hebron. And his whole family was blessed. That's the justice that came to him. He got blessed and his family got blessed. And the judgment hit on those other people. So many people in the world are messing around with the Father, and they better be careful. They're going their own way. So many, even believers, are still holding on to Constantine's doctrine, the tradition, the holidays that have no basis in the Word. And they're missing the fact that Yeshua is a Jew, was a Jew, always will be a Jew. And we need to follow him in the feast day. In this ministry, we go back to our Jewish roots in Yeshua as he taught the apostles and as the apostles taught others. We don't go back to the ceremony and washings and the 600 and some commandments that they can't do. We go back to the beautiful Jewish roots in Yeshua that he teaches us. And I have a book on my website at the bottom of my written message page called Noon, talks about the feast days, the different hours in the day when the Father moves the most. Another book on the bottom of the message page is the Trinity Really a Mystery, explaining the so-called mystery of the Trinity. They're both free. I have messages on my website, henrywalker.org, about the feast days, the origin of those holidays. And don't forget about the Sabbath. Friday night, 6 p.m. to Saturday night, 6 p.m. is a beautiful time when the Father wants to draw us into his presence and give us more power for the week up ahead, which starts on Saturday at 6 p.m. We have to get on this timing. So again, we're talking about how the Father's bringing justice our way, at the same time bringing judgment to the world. Because he's been calling so many people, but they don't want to hear. They just don't want to listen. So if any of you believers are still in this Constantine tradition, study the origin of it and what is included in that Constantine's Christianity and get it out of your life and follow Yeshua in his feast days. He fulfilled every one of the feast days with the exception of the last three, which he will. That's Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles, which is Sukkot. He's born on Passover, died on Passover. He's exactly 32 years old. There's a message on my website. When was Yeshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? It'll eliminate 3 of those holidays. That one message. Don't be distracted by things that are happening in the world. The Father is dealing with the world differently than us. Let him just do what he's going to do. People have nothing or nobody to hold on to. And he's allowing that to happen so more people will turn to him. So as I mentioned in every podcast also, if your flesh is giving you any impure thoughts, any worry, fearful, anxious thoughts, just say out loud, say, Yeshua, I thank you for the crown of thorns that you had around your head. That means my mind is protected by your blood. I only think your thoughts. And any thoughts you get from the flesh that are contrary to his word, give them to the Father, like a tennis match. Give them to him. As we close, if any of you have any questions or any praise reports, you can contact me by email at contact, C-O-N-T-A-C-T, at henrywalker.org. I'll be so glad to hear from you. And if you enjoy these podcasts, tell other people about these podcasts. Share, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to next time. This is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than anything or anybody in the world.